Meeting will open for discussion. Would you please now help us welcome our speaker for this series, taking us through all 15 weeks of our Big Book study from the Charlestown Beach meeting down in Charlestown, Rhode Island, John M. Thanks, John.
I'm a recovered alcoholic. My name is John. Thank you for having me tonight. Listen, I stand before you a broken man, and that's not some sort of like false pride or false humility, but I make mistakes. I make a lot of them. I make them with my family, with my kids, with my wife, with my, my clients, people in my industry, everybody. Like, if I don't have God within me, and I'm not asking God to work in and through me, just like living in 10, 11, and 12, particularly 11, it's like intuitive thought and direction all throughout the day. Like, I'll make a mess. Time is irrelevant. It doesn't matter how much time I have. Like, God's not up there with a stopwatch being like, all right, bro, you got, 11 years now, you're good. It's not like that, right? God exists outside of space and time. So, amount of time is irrelevant. And I say that like, I've been really discouraged this week. I lit up on a spiritual practice and like, I felt like my life kind of went downhill. I was talking to Joey about it and Jesse about it before the meeting. And it's all within my own head. The problem centers in my mind rather than my body. Alcoholism and just how my alcoholism manifests. I don't know if you guys can relate to that at all. That's why I need this vast change in outlook, this spiritual experience. Like, I need a God-sized mind. Christ talks about in the scriptures, metanoia, new mind. I need God to give that to me. And I need that, like Bill says in the story, 24 hours a day for God to work in and through me, or I will perish. You can just get that in relationships. And I felt down. So I'm really grateful to the group for having me do this because, like, sure, I feel kind of unspiritually fit. And listen, feelings don't denote what I am truly, like a child of God. And that, like, I know he loves me. I know that, it's not just about feelings and consolations. I talked about consolations before. One of the first times I met, like, the great saints throughout history have periods of dryness, right? And I got to get through that and trust my God. Talks about in the third step, we trust and rely upon God rather than our finite selves. Or I think maybe that's the fourth step. I don't know. Yeah, fourth step. So more about alcoholism. I love on page 30 where we started off. Most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. Body allergy, mental obsession, hopelessness, spiritual malady. No person likes to admit he's bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Once I put booze in my body, I have little control over the amount I take, and then I want to stay stopped, but I can't. More about alcoholism, the majority of the chapter really goes on the latter half. Right, I've talked about it a little bit. You're going to hear a lot of the same stories just because that's my experience with the mental obsession. Self-knowledge doesn't fix it. I can't remember when. So I'm bodily and mentally different from my fellows. A couple of my buddies can stop at 6 if they want. That's not me. Some of them can stay stopped if they feel like they got a problem. That's not me. Therefore, it is not surprising that our drinking careers have been characterized by countless vain attempts to prove we could drink like other people. I try that every time. Like, I filled out to the mental obsession and then I drink again. And then it's like, I remember when I was in college and I started drinking again after a brief period of sobriety and I was in AA. And I remember being at the bar being like, yeah, it's just like, I'll figure out some sort of way to do it. I'm just going to drink beer only. And then it was my birthday, August 3rd. So I drank beer, I think, from like December. It was probably 6 months. December or January to like August. And then my buddy Norm bought me some shots at the bar to celebrate. I'm like, yeah, it's my birthday. I start drinking, and then I'm drinking Jack again. So it's like, no concoction, no narcotic, no whatever is going to help me moderate or figure this thing out. That's a countless vain attempt to try to drink like a normal person. How many times have I done that? I've done that so many different times. The idea that somehow, someday he will control and enjoy his drinking is the great obsession of every abnormal drinker. Like when I was in that moment, when I think I turned 21 then, it was, briefly before that, that was a great obsession. That somehow I'll beat this. What's it say next? The persistence of this illusion, it's illusion. It's not a real tangible thing. It's an illusion. It's a delusion in my mind. I'm making this thing up. It's not based on my experience. I can't separate the true from the false. It's astonishing. Many pursue it into the gates of insanity or death. I keep trying that. I'm going to get the same results. What happens from that body allergy? What happens because I can't stop drinking after 6, 10, 12? I drink until I pass out. I'm separated from the South Kingstown Police Department. Whatever the case may be. I run out of booze, drugs, whatever it is. What happens? That brings me to that pitiful and incomprehensible demoralization it talks about later on in the chapter, or on that page actually, where I'm in jail again, 4 charges on me. How did this happen? Or I wake up from a blackout and I got 2 guns in my face. What happened? I scurry back to Alcoholics Anonymous because things are going bad again. How do I get the heat off my back? Some people die. I was talking about it tonight with somebody. I had a sponsee. He shared with me, this guy who was working on my house shared with me a story that he had, and I shared with him a story that I had where I had a sponsee who went out and he did a line of coke and had fentanyl in it, and he died that night. We pursue it until the gates of insanity or death. We learned that we had to fully concede to our innermost self that we're alcoholic. Not some emotional platitude, right? That like, yeah, mom, I always used to tell my mom, this will be different. I just need the correct combination. Or like, yeah, I'll stop drinking for her. I'll do it for this, I'll whatever. And no, I got to admit to my innermost self. How do I get to that innermost self, that inside my heart moment? Only God can take me there. That's my experience. How do I get there? Terrible experiences, utter hopelessness, incomprehensible demoralizations, time and time and time again, beat down, beat down, beat down. That's why some people die. That's why some people do long prison stints. That's why, right? It's like, because for me, I'm so rebellious that I'll just keep moving and it's because it's a solution that works too, that I know that works, that I can breathe. You're going to take that away from me, my warm blanket? No way. This is the first step in recovery. The delusion that we are like other people or presently maybe has to be smashed. I'm never going to drink like my friend Jackie. I'm never going to be able to figure this out. I'm never, right? And that only comes from bitter experience and painful experiences. It's an inside job. In the moment, I think that this is the most terrible thing that ever happened in my life in that moment. When I came into Alcoholics Anonymous and, I'm destitute. I don't have anything spiritually, emotionally, physically, but I don't even realize that God's removing everything from me to build me back up into this life I can't even imagine. In that moment, I can't see the forest through the trees. But now, 12 years removed from alcohol, going through this book many different times, having many different experiences, finding God, trying to live a spiritual path, letting him work it in my life, I can look back now and be like, wow. Like, pain is the touchstone of growth. But I hate it when I'm in it. It's so uncomfortable, it hurts. What happens when everything gets stripped from you, like Job, right? And everything's removed from me, the cars, the house, the family, all that stuff. Am I still going to give glory to God and the Lord? Or do I have these disordered attachments to these things? See, that's my problem today. Alcohol has been removed. I haven't thought about that in years. My problem is my disordered attachments to the world. Christ says, be in the world, but not of it. Oh gosh, it felt like I cringed thinking about what would happen if I lost my business and all that. I saw a competitor on 295 advertising. I was like, oh, I hate that guy. I'm gonna put a billboard out. I'm gonna have my big fat mug out there and be like, say my business name and be like, honesty, integrity, and results. That's all that matters. Call John. You know, and I'm like, all ego, all pride, and I'm stewing about this. And talking about being spiritually unfit, like I'm not even thinking about doing an active 10-step. I should call somebody. How's Joey doing? How about I reach out to somebody? How about, right, I pray, God remove this at once. No. I feel like God's blessed me with this, like I have this problem in AA and sobriety where I still have the rebellious nature. I hope that I can conform to His grace and I can just do His will all the time. I hope I can move towards that. But gosh, I got a lot of these experiences where I'm not perfect. I'm far from it. I got to admit to you where I'm at today. If I'm not authentic in Alcoholics Anonymous, I'll be authentic on the end of a bar stool. I know that for sure. Right? So I don't perpetrate a front in Alcoholics Anonymous. I had one time, actually, Joey's sponsor, I saw him at a meeting, and like I was just airing it out at one meeting. And listen, we don't share 4 steps from the podium, right? We have to be smart about that. But like, I honestly tell people where I'm at. And he came to me after the meeting. He's like, John, have you ever thought about talking to like a psychiatrist? I was like, no, you're right. Maybe I should. Maybe a little bit more of God too. This is what happens to me when I'm self-centered and I think about myself and I'm not giving of others. Bottom of 31, we don't like to pronounce any individual as an alcoholic, but you can quickly diagnose yourself. Step over to the nearest bar room and try some controlled drinking. Go into a middle of the road meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous and tell somebody that. Whoa, you're gonna get some pushback. That's what the book says though. Right, if I don't really believe, because like, what have we been doing the last few weeks? Like, didn't I tell you when we started this, I was like, man, it's gonna be pressed into our head. It's going to sound like a broken record. My problem, body allergy, phenomenon of craving, mental obsession. Okay, I got it. It just keeps repeating. Because I got to admit to what do we just read? To my innermost self that I'm truly alcoholic. If I don't believe, if I think I can still stop or moderate at 6'10", what's the point? I'm not going to want to do what Alcoholics Anonymous and the first 100 men and women are pitching to me. That's a tall order. You tell me I got to make every single amends where not to hurt another person? I got to do every single one except when I hurt another person? Ooh, I don't want any of that. I might go to jail for that. That's a really tall order unless you're just absolutely know to your innermost self that without God I am nothing and I can't beat this based on self-knowledge. I had this guy in my Wakefield Big Book meeting. It meets Monday nights, 6:45. His name was Bill. He passed away this year. And he used to always talk about the squiggly writing. Go look at the squiggly writing. And it talks about it in the squiggly writing. I forget where it was. Not only had I been off guard, I had made no fight whatever against the first strength. This time I had not thought about the consequences at all. There's one portion. He had much, bottom of 36, this is what I was really looking for. He had much knowledge about himself as an alcoholic, yet all reasons for not drinking were easily pushed aside in favor of that foolish idea that he could take whiskey even if only he mixed it well. Self-knowledge isn't going to fix it if I'm the real deal in here. Because that is insane. That's an insane idea. It talks about it later on 37. Whatever this precise definition of the word may be, we call this plain insanity. How can such a lack of proportion of the ability to think straight be called anything else? That's insanity. Like, the secular world, I shouldn't say that, Alcoholics Anonymous, but the normal world, the normies, right? I guess that's what we call people, or at least middle of the road meetings say, right? The normies outside here might have a different definition of insanity. But Alcoholics Anonymous defines it as buying out on that old idea that, hey, maybe this time will be different. The insane idea. That's insane based on my track record. Like, so I'll give you a personal experience. I think I shared this before. So, like, I'm in Florida. I'm 18. I got a bunch of legal ramifications. I'm in the rehab. I'm in recovery resources. I go back because I failed a drug test and I drank again. And then I'm like, yeah, this time would be different. But then I just can't rest easily inside myself. And I'm sober like a month or so. And I'm in the halfway house now. I'm outside of the actual rehab, a little bit more privileges. And I'm a couple weeks in and the dude's like, hey, a couple of guys are like, hey, I got a bottle of vodka. And we're in his room. It was like 2 or 3 of us. And I'm like, yeah, I like vodka. I just went to a meeting that morning. I think I went to a morning meeting. Oh, I like vodka. I've been sober for a month and a half, 2 months, removed from alcohol. Ooh. I saw the red label, the pop off, that cheap, it's like rubbing alcohol, but I was like, my mouth's salivating. And I'm not even thinking about the terrific and terrible consequences hey, might go to jail for a long time if I drink this. Not thinking about any of that. Literally, my mind failed out. And I drank that vodka and I swigged it. That's insane based on my track record. Based on where I'm at in life, I really, a month back, I was like, I just have to be sober for 2 years. 2 years. And I had a lurking notion, a reservation at the time, but I made a pact in I'm like, 2 years. Once I beat all these charges, and I get off this, because I'm 18, I'm so young. I just had a bad stretch. It's legal stuff. Just gotta get that out of the way, make my mom happy, and then I can drink normally. The insane idea ran out. Now listen, drink normally was stop at 10 or 12. It was never a normal amount in my head that I foresaw myself. See, I was under no delusion that I could actually drink normally, one a night. Never. I knew that would never happen. It was just maybe one day I'll be able to beat the game where I wouldn't black out so much and get arrested so much and cheat on her so much. Whatever the incomprehensible demoralization was at that current time. I like Jim's story. I love how Buddy read it too. I read that to my guys like that, where it's I. It's so littered. He's in selfishness. It's just nothing about God, nothing about we. You can tell based on the verbiage in there that it's just written a whole different way. It's just completely self-centered. And I can relate to that. We told, we'll go top of 36. Yet he got drunk again. We asked him to tell exactly how it happened. This is the story. I came into work on a Tuesday morning. Well, what happened about Monday? I remember I felt irritated that I had been a salesman for a concern I once owned. So he owned the business, then he's got to work for the business. Sounds like he's concerned about, he's got a little resentment, right? Ego deflation. Doesn't own it anymore. I had a few words with the boss. Okay, now he's creating wreckage. And what did it say early on 35? It says he made a good beginning. What do we know about beginning? Usually when Bill's talking about a beginning, it's usually steps 1 through 3 or steps 1 through 4. Maybe you have not shared that 5th step yet, right? But made a good beginning, but failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life. So then he's unclean. I got to be clean in Alcoholics Anonymous. If I'm the real deal in here, I can't have resentments banging around. We'll talk about that in the next couple of weeks, right? Or when we get to that inventory, when we get to the 3rd step, whatever. But I got to be clean in Alcoholics Anonymous to let the sunlight of the Spirit, the Holy Ghost working in through me. Back to Jim's story. I had a few words with the boss, but nothing serious. Yeah, I guess happened a few words with the boss is nothing serious at all. Then I decided to drive into the country and see one of my prospects for a car. Okay, so he never, listen, we all make mistakes, but it doesn't sound like he went back and made that right and made a quick 10-step, went right to him and said he was wrong. How did you make it right? So he went out. On the way, he felt hungry, so he stopped at a roadside place for the bar. I had no intention of drinking. I just thought that I would get a sandwich. I also had the notion that I might find a customer at that place. Fast forwarding back to the squiggly writing. Suddenly, the thought crossed my mind that if I were to put an ounce of whiskey in my milk, it wouldn't hurt me in a full stomach. That's insane. Who likes whiskey in their milk anyway? I mean, I know in the 30s a little bit different, but I vaguely sensed that I was not being any too smart, but felt reassured that I was taking the whiskey in a full stomach. It's like, yeah, I just need a full stomach. I have the sandwich. I'm good. Like, I can relate to that. How many times did I do stuff like that? Like, I'm up at school. I got beat down at a fraternity, almost lost my life. The sheets were sticking to me. I had a spiritual experience. God came to me. It was either God or my guardian angel. I don't know which one. Regardless, all from God, the true God, the living, true and living God. So literally, it's like this voice in my heart. You need to stop drinking. It wasn't audible. It was in my heart. It was just like in here. You're either going to die from a bar fight tomorrow or 60 years down the line from cirrhosis of the liver, but alcoholism is going to kill you. I went back to Alcoholics Anonymous, now my second stint or third stint, whatever it was in AA. I'm 19 at the time, and I'm like, okay, I really got to stop drinking. Like I had this white light moment. I remember it clear as day. I'm up in my school in New Hampshire, and I go to some local AA meetings on campus, and I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna drink. I started reading the book with this guy. I don't know how enthralled with it I was really, but he came over to the house and read it. I don't even know what he was doing at the time, but he was trying to go through the steps with me. And then there was a Pimps and Hose party at my house that night upstairs. And downstairs, we, sorry to be graphic, but that's just what it was. And so everybody's wearing all crazy gear and suits and all that. And I was at my downstairs apartment. There was like 3 different apartments at this. I lived in this big red farmhouse in New Hampshire. Beautiful. And I'm just sitting on the couch and whatever. I went upstairs and I thought I was good. I went to a meeting that morning and about 3 months sober at the time, and someone comes in with a 6-pack of Heineken. And they didn't realize that I was sober, but they knew that I like Heineken, and they're like, John, here's a 6-pack. I got you a 6-pack. And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, I like Heineken. And I could see the suds dripping from it, right? The sweat or whatever, the sweat. And I was just like, yeah, I love Heineken. Popped that off, drank it. Not even a preceding thought, or that's insane. You have to be insane to do that. I had a white light experience. Literally, God came to my heart. I had a guardian angel come down in my room, tell me you're going to die from this. And literally a month and a half later, I'm drinking again. And I'm not even thinking about the terrific consequences where I almost lost my life and the sheets were sticking to me with all the blood loss that I had. That's plain insanity. Self-knowledge for me, all that matters in Alcoholics Anonymous is experience. Based on my track record, self-knowledge definitely fails out on me. There's no amount of willpower that's going to keep me away from the drink. There's no amount of remember when. There's no amount of just think the drink through. None of that's going to work for me. But we got to experience that for ourselves. I like Fred's story too, right? Where he's a really nice guy, it sounds like. Good guy, well-intentioned, everybody likes him. He's just an alcoholic. Successful business. On the outside, you say, hey, everything's good with Fred, right? And what's he think? He's like, it's just a matter of being on guard. Then he tells about it, goes back to the hospital. He calls on those members of Alcoholics Anonymous. 40. We'll go to the bottom. In this frame of mind, this is Fred telling the story. In this frame of mind, I went about my business for a time. All was well. I had no trouble refusing drinks and began to wonder if I had not been making too hard of work a simple matter. One day I went to Washington to present some accounting evidence to a government bureau. I had been out of town before during this particular dry spell, so there was nothing new about that. Physically, I felt fine. Neither did I have any pressing problems or worries. My business came off well. I was pleased and knew my partners would be too. It was the end of a perfect day, not a cloud on the horizon. So it's not like it doesn't sound like he's got resentments banging around inside him. It's just like everything's great. Perfect day. What happened? We got some more squiggly writing. Shout out Bill, rest in peace, Bill. I went to my hotel and leisurely dressed for dinner. As I crossed the threshold of the dining room, the thought came to my mind that it would be nice to have a couple cocktails with dinner. That was all, nothing more. Yeah, it would be nice to have a couple cocktails with dinner. The problem is that I'm a real alcoholic and that I just don't have a couple of cocktails. But you can't think, self-knowledge is irrelevant. I need that protection from the Almighty. I need that protection from God. Whether you believe in him or not is irrelevant. It's like, based on my track record, do I have any self-will left that can keep me away from this? If so, well, great. Maybe you're not a real alcoholic. That's why it tells us in More About Alcoholism, why don't you go to the bar and try some controlled drinking? If you can stop at one for, say, a period of a month or two, then maybe you're not built like me. Or try to stop drinking for a year. If you do that, maybe you're not the real deal. That's what the book says to do. I got to get a full knowledge of my condition. Sure, self-knowledge doesn't matter, but based on my experience, then I'll be pushed to that point of utter hopelessness. Then maybe I'll be ready to accept to my innermost self the first step requirement that I'm truly an alcoholic. Innermost self, based on experience, based on hopelessness. And Fred got there. We can go to 42. I'm going to start at the top. They had said that though I didn't raise a defense, it would one day give way before some trivial reason for having a drink. Well, just that did happen. So he couldn't be on guard. He was on guard and his mind failed out. He drank. Well, just that did happen and more. For what I had learned of alcoholism did not occur to me at all. I knew from that moment that I had an alcoholic mind. I saw that willpower and self-knowledge would not help me in those strange mental blank spots. I had never been able to understand people who said that a problem had them hopelessly defeated. I knew then it was a crushing blow. I got to get to that hopelessness. I've been talking about it my last couple of talks. How do I get there? Well, from my experience, and really from the first 100 men and women's experience that we can read, the mental obsession is going to get me there. When I do this time, and that's where it got me, time and time and time again. Where it's just like, I want to stay stopped, but I can't. My mind fails out of me, or I feel myself justified by worry, anxiety, nervousness. We talked about that earlier in the chapter that we read tonight. Even when I do it deliberately based on that is insane. And I've done that plenty of times too. When I get to that point where it's just like, I knew on that boat, I think it was July 4th, 2012, 3 months before God separated me from alcohol, hopefully for the last time, that I knew to my innermost self that I was truly alcoholic. I was just like, I'm never going to be able to stay stopped. I'm never going to be able to moderate. There's no way. And what I do in that boat, I went right for the 30 rack. Lost everything because I was swimming in Old Harbor at that night. Lost everything and almost drowned. Lost my phone and my wallet, my keys and everything, but I had that 30 pack and went on for another 3 months, just like Bill did, went on for another 3 months, drinking. How do I get to the state of hopelessness? And then what happened? And I'll end with this, okay? 2 members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. That's a proposition I got to lay out to new guys that I work with, right? Are you the real alcoholic? Because I can't answer that for you. Do you have the phenomenon of craving? Do you have that mental obsession? And are you really licked this time? Are you utterly hopeless and done? How do you get there? What's your experience with the mental obsession? Let's lay that out. Do you not believe that? You want to write that out even? Because you got to get there. Hopefully you get there by this book rather than bitter experience out in the field. We don't want you to go back out and do that. Because that's a hopeless condition if you have that. Do you understand, right? I had to concede both propositions, not just one. I need to be utterly hopeless, and I gotta have the body allergy and mental obsession. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality such as I had exhibited in Washington was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. This process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself. So back on page 40 or 39, whatever it was, he's like, yeah, self-knowledge will fix it. And then a little bit of time and experience out in the field, and that last flicker, when you're approached with a person, just like we read in There Is a Solution, I think it was last week, right? Was it There Is a Solution last week, right? When you're approached with a person that's armed with the facts about themselves, that has a real knowledge of this condition, right? And they explain to you their experience, and like, this is a hopeless condition as it was for me. Like, that's gonna extinguish that last flicker of hope, and maybe I'll be able to do this myself. If you still think that, then you're just living in a delusional state, and God help you, because I don't help anybody. I'm just here to be helpful, but God does the work, not me. They outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. And meant I would have to throw lifelong conceptions out of the window. Let's remove what I think about God that's irrelevant. Are you ready to have a new experience with him? Because really, we're going to go into the actionable, quote-unquote, spiritual exercises, which is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and you might have a new experience with him, hopefully. And what's it talk about? I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying, and I hope more useful than the life I had lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. That's pretty powerful, because he had a pretty good life before. Me, I didn't really. I made a mess of my life. So this is a really easy situation when I start going through the 12 steps and I get lit up by God. And I'm like, yeah, this is it. Like, I love this life. This is amazing. Right? And with this, bottom of 43. Once more, again, let's just pound it one more time. The alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases. Neither he nor any human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power. It must come from God. Thanks.